we're all limited, even the professionals. And that's the most frustrating part. What I get from the story is that there's no like direct solution and no one really knows. And it's, I mean, that's a lonely, sad, terrible existence. What's going on, everyone? Mike Griff back with a brand new reaction. Tonight, we're jumping into Ren Chapter 3. Let's keep this book going. Like, comment, share, subscribe. As we dive in deeper into the life of Ren, finding more about the man behind the music, so I can come back. We can all come back, maybe, if you haven't heard this yet. And revisit his catalog in a whole new, deeper way. We're just understanding things better. Like, I really can't wait to get into Hey Ren again, get into so many things. I listened to Troubles before, and I didn't really catch it. I didn't really understand what he was talking about, and lots of lyrics from Troubles are popping up in my head while I watch this stuff, so I'm very excited because I haven't put those videos, those reactions out yet, because I listened to them off camera for the first time. But now it's going to be like I'm listening to the first time again, and I can capture those and share them with you. So this is very exciting and very enlightening. It shakes your soul. It helps ground you in humanity. It helps I don't know. Shake you awake almost. In the best and worst, in the best way, but it's hard. And we're here together. We're gonna go through this. So here we go, Chapter 3.
My therapist was scowling at my weekly anxiety and depression scores like a detective trying to crack a particularly stubborn case. There were no signs of improvement, and the scores followed no real measurable pattern that were consistent with bipolar. After nearly 2 years of talk therapy and taking enough medications to fill a pharmacy, he sat down with me and he dropped the bombshell that he didn't think that I had bipolar. In fact, he said that he didn't think that I had depression at all. And it was a very odd thing to be stripped of an identity in an instant. The reality was that a 20-minute in-and-out consultation 2 years ago led to 2 years of swallowing pills that I never needed and devoting so much of my time to managing the condition that I never actually had. The emotions inside me swirled around like a mismatched soup. On one hand, I was full of anger and I was bitter about the whole situation, but I was also hopeful that this new path could offer me the relief that I desperately needed. He told me he was going to refer me to an ME clinic in Bath. I'd never heard of it before, but instinctively true to character, I started researching it online as soon as I got home. Apparently, ME is the medical equivalent of a choose-your-own-adventure book, with tiredness as the only consistent plotline. There were no universally accepted reasons as to why the fuck it existed in the first place. It seemed it was largely accepted to be a post-viral condition, but that was all speculative because there were no clear consensus in the medical community what ME even was. The defining characteristic was a tiredness that wouldn't go away with rest. I could relate to this. In fact, I could more than relate to it. For anyone lucky enough to not have experienced this, if you want an idea of what it's like, force yourself to stay awake for 3 nights in a row. During this time, eat the food that makes you feel terrible, and in this sleep-deprived state, exercise until your muscles give out. By the 3rd day, you'll have a small insight into living with this condition. During the years post-stem cell transplant, where I...
That sounds crazy. I'll tell you once, for a film, I decided to enter into a film festival a week before the film festival. Before I had to submit, which means I had to shoot a film in a week. And just because it was fun, because I was interested at the time, I decided to do it on 16mm film instead of, digital cameras and whatnot, which I had never done before. So I had 1 week to make a film on 16mm film, which I'd never done before. to shoot it all and enter it into a film festival. That entire week, I did not sleep. So about, it's fuzzy. It was like a decade ago, over a decade ago. But it was 5 to 7 days. I remember the last shot I had to get, because film, when you shoot on film, it doesn't pick up light as well as modern cameras. So in order to get exterior night shots, you have to light, like I had to get an exterior night shot of this pizza place. And realistically, how they would do it in Hollywood is they would light the entire pizza place. I couldn't do that. So the only way for me to do it and be able to fake it in post is to get a shot of the pizza place at dawn, right before the sun comes up. So I shot that day and night. Then I had to stay up all night. This was the last night. I had to stay up all night, I remember, just to get an exterior shot of the pizza place. So whatever. That's just ingrained in me so much. I know I stayed up the whole week, but I remember that was the last night, and I just had to wait hours for this one shot, and it was the last shot. And by the time I went to bed that night and I put my head on the pillow and I closed my eyes, I couldn't close my eyes. I started hallucinating. I had the TV on, and the TV was like moving in and out, and every time I closed my eyes, I felt like I was standing up and the room was spinning. Like, no sleep is no joke, and I'll never forget that experience. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't doing what he's talking about, but I'm sorry I just went off on a tangent on that. I'm trying to relate a bit. I'm trying to share myself too, as he is. But I obviously haven't experienced what he went through. It was a choice what I did. But through that choice, I experienced an insight into how important, how much lack of sleep can mess with your psyche, and it was very profound.
And in this sleep-deprived state, exercise until your muscles give out. By the third day, you'll have a small insight into living with this condition. During the years post-stem cell transplant, where I recovered a lot of my health and functionality, I remember getting COVID and thinking it was a walk in the park compared to the first year of my illness. The difference was COVID lasted about a week. The thick of my illness lasted 8 years, and it only was getting worse. I pinned a lot of hope on going to that first visit at the ME clinic. It was a 6-month waiting list, God bless NHS wait times, but I felt excited to be surrounded by people who would understand me, where I could climb out of this nightmare. But my hopes were pretty quickly crushed during that first visit. I remember walking into a space that looked like a disused classroom where a bunch of people on chairs were sitting around in circles like Alcoholics Anonymous. I could feel a sense of camaraderie and that we all felt like dog shit. We were all confused and we were all desperately wanting to feel better. I believe at the time I was probably the youngest in the group. The group leader waddled in and handed us all a booklet that looked like a school timetable. She then sat us down and told about this new revolutionary technique called pacing, where you write down and track everything that you do in a day, and then you do it less. And then with time, do it more again. The theory being that you have a limited bucket of energy compared to normal people, and you need to protect that and gradually push it. I thought this sounded pretty stupid, so I raised my hand. I told her about the pain in my body. I told her that my muscles twitched constantly. I told her that my bones ached. I told her that my mouth was dry. I couldn't focus. That some days they'd be without mercy and I'd be trapped in bed for the whole day.
The thing about this experience, man, and I understand his anger and frustration with the medical professionals. And I don't know where he's going with this exactly. But I'm going to say is they act like they know. Always. They have to. You know, they're very educated. They're very confident. They're very egotistical, whatnot. And you got to be when you're playing with what they're playing with. But in the end, it's a practice, and they don't know. And most of the time, actually, all the time, it's really a guess. Sometimes it's a very dialed-in guess, but, I mean, just watch House. Like, it's just the way diagnostics seems to work in that show is, symptoms lead to a guess. And you can only know so much, and really don't know anything. So they're trying stuff. They're throwing shit at a wall. They're like, maybe this will work. This has worked before. Everyone's different. Like, you don't really know. And you can get frustrated, but, like, we're all limited. Even them. Even the professionals. And they can only do so much. And that's the most frustrating part. I think from what I get from the story is that there's no, like, direct solution, and no one really knows. And that's a lonely, sad, terrible existence.
But the days that I wanted to make the most of it. Ached. I told her that my mouth was dry. I couldn't focus. That some days they'd be without mercy and I'd be trapped in bed for the whole day. But the days that I wanted to make the most of it. I wanted to breathe the air and I wanted to live. She told me she understood it's hard, but she didn't really offer more than that. She just pointed at the booklet and told me to follow it. I asked her about things like heavy metal poisoning, about chronically reactivating viruses, about defective mitochondria, about all the things that I read that were linked to chronic fatigue, but she just raised an eyebrow, looked at me like I was a hypochondriac, and told me she knew nothing about those things. I remember walking out of the building feeling disheartened and defeated, so much so that my legs buckled as I was walking home. I began to sob uncontrollably on the side of the road. An old woman knelt down to comfort me and asked me what was wrong. I didn't even really know how to explain, so I just told her that I missed my friend. Despite my skepticism, I stuck to the program for at least half a year, and I kept going for my periodic visits to the clinic, and it did jack shit. In fact, I got worse. I was always getting worse. One thing that particularly struck me about the ME support groups was the pure desperation and confusion. With most other conditions, you're given a diagnosis, a prognosis of whether it's going to kill you, and what you can do to manage it or cure it. With ME, you don't get that. You get an indeterminately long sentence to purgatory. You feel worse than you've ever felt in your whole life, and you're given no explanation as to why, and no signpost pointing the way out. There was no selection bias to the people suffering. Members of the group were anything from esteemed ex-lawyers to single parents to former athletes. One thing I can say, these people were for the most part all extremely driven and collectively mourning their old lives. There's a stigma that because ME's predominant presentation of symptoms is tiredness, that its victims are just being lazy. I can tell you firsthand that me and every single person I've met with genuine ME would rather run 1,000 marathons than have to live another week with the tiredness and the unrelenting fatigue. We were at war with our tiredness, trying desperately to escape it, and some of us would go to extreme lengths to turn ourselves into guinea pigs to try and find ways out. Suicide was pretty common in those online support groups. It was around this time I was swallowed into the music industry. I was out busking on the streets one day and I noticed this sketchy, good-looking Mauritian guy with his arms crossed watching me, really intensely, as though he was studying every lyric coming out of my mouth. He approached me and asked me if the songs I was singing were mine. I said they were. A big smile was painted across his face, and he told me he just finished recording Plan B's latest record, which turned out to be The Defamation of Strickland Banks, one of my favourite albums of all time. He was looking for a new project to sink his teeth into, and he asked me if I'd come to London to record. We got into it. The whole time I felt dreadful, but this was a lifelong dream materialising in front of my eyes. So bit by bit, when I could, I'd get the train to London and start chipping away at my first ever album. I didn't really let on how I was feeling during this time because I didn't want to sabotage it. There would be times I'd finish up in the vocal booth after doing the take, excuse myself to go to the toilet, throw up from the dizziness I was experiencing, sometimes with specks of blood, and then I'd go back and pretend that nothing had happened. I'd be sitting around with the whole room spinning and would pretend I was fine. There was only so long that I was able to keep this up. Eric told me it'd be a cool idea for me to start going to industry showcases and start building buzz. Performing live like this was a whole new level of taxing that I wasn't ready for, but I was so ferociously ambitious that I just ploughed through. The usual way it would go is I'd be in the back of Charlie's car, the whole world would be spinning, I'd be trying my best to sleep in it all day, parked up outside of whatever venue or pub it was in London, trying to conserve energy for the show. Sometimes I'd cry a little before I performed. My whole body would be burning. Then I'd brush it off and I'd get on stage and I'd perform as best I could. People would come up to me at the end, pat me on the back. I'd smile and pretend to be charismatic. Then I'd get back in the car and I wish I was in bed and have to endure a 3-hour drive back to Bath from London. There was only a few shows where I could keep pretending. I'd usually be trying to disguise the fact that my body was trembling through the fatigue and pain. Eventually I started crying mid-set. It became blindingly obvious to everyone working with me during that time that something was very wrong. I told Eric that I needed to take some time out. My plan was to live at home with my mum for a month maximum, get my energy back, and come and finish the record. That 1 month turned into 2 months, turned into 3 months, turned into 6 months. I'd pushed myself to total burnout. The distance led to me and that angel breaking up, in part because it was difficult to navigate a relationship when you have so much brain fog, and I didn't know what it was well enough to be able to explain it to her at the time. With a loud thud, I'd been jolted out of a Shakespearean storyline, I lost the record deal, and I couldn't get out of bed. My friends from Trick the Fox never really called to check up on me. It felt like the whole world was moving at lightning speed without me. I had this amazing opportunity right in front of me, and I was chained to the floor. I was alone, I was sick. I wished that my condition would get it over with and kill me, but it wouldn't.
Yeah, this is tough. This sucks so much. I paused it. I don't know how this is gonna go with Trick the Fox, but he said they wouldn't, they didn't even call to check up on him, which really sucks. The last chapter I reacted to had a Trick the Fox song on it. I had to take it down because it got flagged for copyright, and then I have to repost it with the song cut out from it. I just know that's something Ren wouldn't have done, so I know that comes from Trick the Fox. Just weird. So
I was sick. I wished that my condition would get it over with and kill me, but it wouldn't, and it felt cruel that it wouldn't. It just let me rot in bed. The whole world would continue to turn, and I would rot. In the next episode, I'm going to tell you about a fight with a television and losing my anal virginity to an 80-year-old man. Stay tuned for that.
Wow, man. I haven't been through what he's been through, but I connect to that. And I want to keep going on about, oh, this has reminded me about my own experiences. Like, this is about Ren. I don't want to make it about me. But he's connecting with me in ways. Like, I have never been through the hell that he's describing, but I feel like we all can relate to parts of it in ways. Especially, like, that song he just played, like, eight years. So 8 chapters. Is it each chapter a year? What does he say about what happens in the next chapter? Man. I feel like I want to wait for another night to record that one. Like, obviously these all come out in segments, but part of me is like, let's just get through it. So if I put it off and I keep putting it off, it just seems so heavy, and like I personally never been through anything like that. I know of Yeah, man, I'm feeling just very self-conscious about all this, because like I said, there are things that thoughts that are brought up for me that I relate to, but like I'm trying not to, like, this is so sensitive, and I'm trying to treat this so carefully, but at the same time I'm trying to react and connect with you guys on how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to take away from him. At the same time, like, I've never stepped in the depths that he's revealing to us right now. Nothing like this. I'm just trying to relate. I'm trying to empathize. And I'm over-explaining, I feel, at this point. But please let me know your comments. Let me know what you think. I really thrive off of the feedback with this, when, like, there's just this vulnerability at play. Because I don't know where to go. I'm just reacting. And encouragement helps, but tips help too. Like, just help direct me. Like, help tell me if I'm doing right, doing wrong. I don't know. I'm just doing what I feel. Yeah. See you guys in the next one.